All right, welcome back to the Responsible AI Summit. We've had a little bit of a break, and the panel and I have had a little bit of a chance to chat and get to know each other a little bit better. And we are so excited to be here with you, our global community, listening in on our Responsible AI Summit. We have some phenomenal members of the panels, young leaders from around the world who are really making an incredible difference in how to integrate AI responsibly into human life. And I want to start by giving all of you an opportunity, just a minute or two, just to introduce yourself, the work that you do, who you are, why you are here today, so that our audience get a chance to listen to you. And we'll do this in alphabetical order. And if my math is right, I think that means we will begin with Elle. Is that correct?
Hello. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Elle. I am an AI researcher and policy advisor. I also do presenting and research and journalism into emerging technologies with a specialism of AI. I have a big tech background, so I was one of the people training one of the generative and search engine conversational AIs, what it means to humanize and really create that balance between sentient and not too human AI. And lastly, I am an author. So I take all of these learnings within my emerging technology background and I turn it into some speculative, sometimes sci-fi, sometimes dystopian fiction. Oh, and I'm also a faculty advisor, and I teach at Hebei University of Technology at Arizona College of Technology.
Thank you so much, Elle. And then I think, Jess, if you would tell us who you are and your background.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for everyone for organizing the event. Elle, I really want to read your books now. About me, so I come from an academic background. I have a doctoral degree in cognitive psychology with a focus on experimental methods. And so what I did for my research was understand the way that we interact with technology, how it influences our communication styles, our learning, memory, and also just our mental health that can be in the equation also. After I finished my degree, I transitioned into user experience research, which is seems to be the other side of the same coin. In this space, I'm trying to make products that are intuitive for people to use, that are stress-free, and that they solve the problems for the users. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm new in this AI space. I'm very enthusiastic about learning all these things and making this information accessible to people.
Thank you so much, Jess, and thank you for joining us here today at the Responsible AI Summit. Joseph, welcome. Would you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in the AI space?
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So I am Joseph Owabafo, and I'm currently serving as the National Director for ENCO Justice Ghana. And my work involves overseeing work in the how advocacy and AI policy is being spread in Ghana, especially as a youth movement. And a social tech developing and solving social issues with the use of technology, and that has made me work especially with the technical side of AI a lot, developing AI to serve customer virtual assistants, and it has caused me to be more keen and critical about the statements I need to adhere as a developer. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you, Joseph. The sound was a little bit rocky, but I want to make sure also to highlight that not only is Joseph an early adopter in AI in Ghana, really setting the pace for AI development in the community, and a big voice in the conversation there. Also heading off the youth branch of ENCO Justice for Ghana as well. A very commendable feat. So thank you for your service to that. I think if you're not familiar with ENCO Justice, jump in and take a look at this youth organization that's really promoting a global voice, a seat at the table for young people around the world. Thank you for that, Joseph. Majid, warm welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the AI Summit. It's been a great experience so far since I've been tuned into the AI Summit. I have a healthcare background. I'm a pharmacist by profession, and I've started my career as an academic since 2007. So I was teaching in pharmacy, and then I'm teaching in medicine now. So I've got teaching experience of more than about 15 years. So I've always been a big fond of using technology and the role of technology in enhancing the learning practice. So since the AI has come on the horizon, I've been very much interested in how we can use AI in education, in educational institutes. Although we have lots of still I feel there's a lot of resistance because from the educators, but I think we need to work on. I think their concern I can also see that is from the point of view of ethics, that whether if we allow students to use AI, or if we use AI, whether this is the right thing or not. So I think that's where the ethics come in as well. So we need to be more aware of the ethical use of AI practice. So that's my background.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to join us today. These are incredibly important conversations, and I know also from all four of you that not only are you in conversation, you also have tangible solutions. You have experience on what can we actually do to make a significant impact on the use of responsible AI. I want to, because I spoke a little bit earlier today, both with Majid and Elle, and we touched on some of the issues around representation in technology. Elle is one of the winners of the Tech Women Award, Tech Women 100 Awards for 2024. And so thank you for the work you do for representation. Majid and I also spoke earlier on the difficulty in terms of cultural representation when you're using AI, that it doesn't always understand exactly how to do a culturally appropriate output. So my first question is for the two of you. We'll start with you, Elle, and then Majid. But the question has to do with women and youth participation in AI and tech. So Elle, for you, from your experience, both as a journalist and as an advocate, what are the narratives that you think we need to shift in order to inspire more young women and youth to pursue careers in AI and tech? What are you seeing out there, and how can media and public discourse play a role for us?
Well, I think to begin with, summits like this can be so helpful because it's so common to see any tech events or especially tech summits, and the lineup is typically all white men, usually in their 40s. I love it when they even have the same name. There's, I think, one last year where I think about 8 of them were all called John. And it's just nice to see that diversity, even just inspiring and having those conversations. And then it also comes down to our attitudes as well. So just getting used to seeing particularly a mixture, so all different types of people working within tech. And so I've had experiences when I walk into places and people have assumed that I'm the receptionist, I'm the PA, and that I'm most certainly not the person they're expecting to speak to. And at the same time, I think it's equally difficult or challenging for women if they do want to have more of a feminine look. And a common complaint I hear in the tech industry are women feeling that, okay, maybe they need to tone themselves down or wear less makeup, or really have those concerns and not just get to be their authentic selves, whilst also being in the industry they so desire and so they care about. So I think having that representation, not just of who can enter the industry, but being that little bit more authentic and showing that tech can really be for everybody. And I think when we're seeing the outputs of these generated AI and people complain that it's biased, really we need to think about who is training those models and who's contributing to create less biased models.
Yeah, very important point you bring up there. And it brings me back to you, Majid, because you spoke about this also, that the AI is only as good as the data that's in there. And we talked a little bit about earlier today how some of the outputs your students are ending up with outputs that are really not neither appropriate nor representative of the culture in which they are learning and studying. So my question for you connects to that a little bit, and also on this representation in STEM. In the context of higher education, have you seen any policies on AI that really work to encourage diversity in STEM and AI related fields? And if not, what are some of the thoughts you had on policies that might actually really work to ensure that we find a good balance in the field?
In terms of the role of women and youth?
Yeah, not just women. I think representation, diversity in general, but also of course in the context of what Elle was mentioning about representation of women in the field.
I think I work in Middle East, so I think maybe it's some cultural issues as well. But now the things are changing. That the higher positions you tend to see men working, so there's less representation of the females in the higher positions. But it's with time it's changing. But still, I think what is needed at the moment is to have the equal representation of the females as well, because those are the people who are making policies. So if there are women representation as well, then of course we can have more diverse perspective. Interestingly, I was just reading one of the reports, and I came across that that in the AI job sector, only women representation is only 22%. So I was just thinking that we need to think about that, why this percentage is low in the first place. What are the barriers? Why is it not equal representation? So we need to think about the barriers and try and address that. That why there is a gap between the representations from the two gender. So with policy making, although I have seen in the policy making, coming back to your point, with the policy makers, yeah, there's a huge difference between the representation. But when I actually see the policies made up and they are implemented, I don't see, to be honest, that like biased policy or anything. Because women have very strong voice, although low representation, right? So I don't see any policies which are implemented they have bias in it, but yet yes, when the policymakers there is a less representation.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate your generosity and feedback there. I think it brings back also some of the things that Elle was talking about, that policymakers have a general age of above 50, and so there is a certain lack of diversity even when it comes to age, and that's before we get to issues of gender and culture. So all of the very relevant things for us to consider in our conversations. I want to jump to Jess and Joseph. And Jess, I want to start with you. Jess and Joseph, I want to talk a little bit about AI literacy. And for you, Jess, I know that you have some background and a lot of thoughts in user experience. One of the things I hear a lot in AI literacy platforms, AI literacy design, AI literacy curriculum, are teachers saying, why didn't anyone talk to us? And I hear students saying, why didn't anyone talk to us? What's going wrong there? What's the user experience principles that should really guide the design of our AI literacy platforms to help encourage not only self-directed learning, but also meaningful experience in that learning space? What are your thoughts on that, Jess?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. A lot to unpack there. I think, so when we're talking about education in that space, when we're building curriculums, we tend to build them out for like, okay, this semester, these are the objectives we're going to learn. But we don't really pause to think about, wait, where are our students at right now? How can we meet them halfway? And the reason why is because everything's a lot quicker. It's like fast paced. You got to hurry up. You got to make that syllabus. Got to make sure all the quizzes and tests are put together. There's not a lot of time in between to pause and make those assessments. Something I used to do when I taught at undergraduate level was I would try to put out a survey before they would take exams or before they would enter the first real lecture to see where they are. And it takes a lot of work to customize each course. I'm sure, Majid, you've had that experience of tailoring your courses. So I think it's that there's not a lot of time to do so, but that doesn't mean that it's an excuse. I think we should certainly pause and start making time to meet our students, our learner experiences halfway. There are many different personas. It's not just a student comes into class and, that student might be the first in their family to graduate high school, to go into college. They have a totally different context. Their level of, I want to ask a professor a question, is not the same as somebody who grew up with parents that did go to college. Same thing as somebody who has neurodivergence. If maybe they're not even aware that they're neurodivergent and they're figuring that out. So I think because there's a lot of unknowns, we tend to create this blanket course for everyone, but we also need to be including how can we meet them halfway? How can we make this a personable experience? So yeah, I want to hear what Joseph has to say about that too.
Fantastic. Joseph, feel free to jump in. And I also want to add, if you could speak to us a little bit about the unique, I suppose it's wrong to say unique experience for Ghana, because this is the reality for 2/3 of the countries in the world. But in Ghana, only 40% of the people are really able to access these digital technologies, which of course has a big impact on AI literacy. So I'll let you jump off what Jess was talking about, but if you could also bring up some thoughts and maybe even talk a little bit about how an organization like Encode Justice can help make a difference.
One thing that I always say is like in terms of AI literacy and education in general, it's all about how the student and teacher relationship is, in terms of how the students receive what teacher is given, and then tend to adapt.
Joseph, we are losing you a little bit, and I'm not sure if it's your microphone, but maybe you can try without the headset and see, because your voice is not coming through to us very well.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I guess turn off the camera could help. Yeah.
Sounds good. We want to make sure we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I was just putting it across that teachers are really good at identifying that this student needs kind of special attention, and then maybe this specific class needs kind of special attention. So in terms of digital literacy in general, not just AI literacy, I would say Ghana is catching up, and African countries are catching up. Some African countries are also ahead, like Rwanda is so ahead in terms of AI. When you take Rwanda has published AI strategies. Ghana is yet to release, Benin is yet to Togo yet. It's more on these kinds of fellowship that get to introduce, because when Encode Justice started in Ghana, we've been able to run like more than 5 workshops in 3 months, and you realize the kind of people, the syllables were given from the international terrain to use at Ghana. You have to modify it a bit. One one thing I've realized is case studies go with the Ghanaian way. We like taking stuff from imagine the storytelling way. That's with that. So it's more about fixing yourself in the shoes and understand it. If you don't fit yourself in the shoes, you've not been in the really experienced how it is to pick and adapt to stuff. You can't really give them what they want. So from my experience and the many Ghanaians who attest to the fact that we love storytelling, and then storytelling really helps us fix stuff. So then the way we chose to spread AI literacy was choose for storytelling. And then also the way AI models are trained, many AI models speak English. They don't speak Ghanaian language or something so local or something we can easily pick it in. Because we are struggling a lot with grammar here. And then there is an AI literacy platform out there. How many people is going to know? How many people get to have educated parents to tell them that there is an AI literacy platform? So there is this people NLP Ghana. They created an AI that speaks T, can speak L and lots of local languages, and that's really helped. That's created a massive difference. So it's more about benchmarking, inclusive benchmarking. When you're setting a benchmark, you should look about the kind of languages you are feeding. If it goes more locally, I feel AI literacy will be massive. If you also consider cultural background, because one paper I was reading from the human intelligence and artificial intelligence, it was saying something like, Africans like to connect more with their AIs. We feel AIs can be our personal assistants, kind of. So they want to connect more with an AI. So if you are giving them an AI literacy curriculum, and the curriculum is not giving them that kind of connection, it's really difficult. I think we are not going to adapt it. So I feel unique circumstances, considering the general kind of cultural and the way we receive it, mattering and how it works best with us, would we create a massive difference in how AI literacy is being spread. So yeah.
Wow, incredible. I just want to say for the audience, we are struggling a little bit with the sound for Joseph, but we have already discussed that we need to continue this conversation at another time. So this will not be the last time that we will be chatting with Joseph, but you bring up an incredible, important point, something that I had to learn myself when I started working with an organization in Kenya about 6 or 7 years ago, and also working with the think tank AI for Africa, that I think I know a few things, but at the end of the day, I have no idea what I'm talking about, because I really don't understand the context in which the user, the learner, will be using this technology. And I think a good example of that is something like storytelling and building AI literacy in a way that actually resonates with the Ghanaian consciousness, the Ghanaian understanding, which is all the more reason why we really need our youth leaders to rise up around the world and make it clear that this story we're getting from Silicon Valley about how AI can save teachers time, and it can give individualized learning, and it can grade better, and it can do this and that, is only really a message for the minority of people on the planet, and doesn't resonate with many others. So thank you so much for pointing that out, Joseph, and an important thing for us to take away when we think about AI literacy, that we have to think on a global scale, not just the users that are in the usual suspect users of technology. So thank you for that. It brings me to a question about ethics. And so I want to return both to Elle and to Majid as well to talk a little bit about ethical considerations. And Elle, the first question goes to you. And it has a little bit to do with also the media, because I'm thinking you might be able to speak to us a little bit about how ethical considerations can be made more accessible to educators and students who who may actually really lack technical expertise? And can journalists play a role in holding the AI industry not only accountable, but also teaching them how to make considerations accessible in a more equitable way? What are your thoughts on that?
Of course. So the problem with journalism is it's such a double-edged sword. So it has all the power to really help and question things as it should be, but it also has the potential to do so much harm, which is what I think we're seeing now in this age of misinformation. And so I want to quickly focus on the harms. So I think one of the real issues in terms of journalism, media, digital literacy, and AI are newsrooms covering it. What a lot of them are doing are catastrophizing this. AI has become sentient. It's the end of the world. It will take all of our jobs. And the implications of this is that end users will be so afraid to use it. And sometimes if you talk to people, because we're all in the AI space now, so it's so easy to think that everybody thinks the same as we do. They're optimistic and they're very cheery about AI. But the reality is not true. And there's a lot of people who inherently say, no, AI is awful, we shouldn't use it at all. And it's about where do you find that middle ground? And that's really the power of journalism and the media. And I think it goes back to the traditional role of media, which was holding governments and different companies accountable and really questioning them. So we can have two differences. We have some of the harms, especially in this industry where it's pay per click, get the headlines, get the clickbait. How do you lure people in? And then we also have really great reporting, and especially now there's the Pulitzer Prize for AI coverage. And it's really having those long form investigations and questioning some of what's going on. And that will always inform the general public's opinion of AI. And that's really the role of a journalist, to act in the middle and kind of progress the information between science, government, and the general public. So I think to have those ethical considerations, we need to remove the clickbait titles, the misinformation, and really return to focusing on how can we best inform people of what's currently going on in the world.
Wow, thank you so much for that. It brings to mind the comment that Elon Musk made about robots needing a kill switch because they can climb upstairs and put it into us all. And I thought it's very hard to build a robot. We'll have sentient AI, I think, before we'll have robots that can climb upstairs and do these things. But we shall see. But as you point out, it's clickbait and it's distracting from the real issues. Majid, I want to return to you also in the context of ethics, because you said something very interesting in your presentation earlier on today in the Responsible AI Summit, where you talked a little bit about the cultural context in terms of large language model outputs, that sometimes what a large language model will come up with is either not appropriate or simply just not suitable for the control context. So here at the Responsible AI Summit, we've been very fortunate that we have an audience coming from just about anywhere in the world: Malawi, Jamaica, we've seen New York, we've seen from different countries in the European Union, we have Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and from many countries in Africa. Australia was here as well. So if you're thinking cultural context on a more global scale, what is the influence of the ethical challenges when you're implementing AI in education? And also, are there any governance models that you can think of? And here I think of educational governance models that have been effective, for instance, in your school, a school policy, or that you've seen in other places, to ensure that there is a fairness in these sort of AI driven decision making or AI outputs in the classroom. What are your thoughts on some of these things?
I think I will start with a little bit of background that in healthcare education, there's something which we say there's I would say a branch of healthcare education is interprofessional education. Interprofessional education, we teach students about how to interact with different healthcare professionals from different backgrounds. And also what we also need to we try to emphasize is that the students have exposure to the clinical cases where they're dealing with the patients from the different backgrounds, because from the different cultures, from the different ethnic origins, because that's what they will face in the practice also, and that's what we train them on. So that's what we do traditionally. But now with the AI, and to be honest, I've not seen that cultural diversity in the AI applications, and the worrying thing is that nobody's recognizing is that there is a lack of cultural diversity in AI applications unless we think about and talk about it. So I have seen and I've observed, that's my personal observation, that there is no cultural equal representation in AI applications and AI tools the students use, and not even in the frameworks. But I think there is a strong need to develop the frameworks, and when we develop the policies in the higher education institutions, we need to recognize that at the moment, currently, the data, this is how the data looks like. Because of that, we do not have this cultural diversity in AI applications, but we should be aware of that this is one of the drawbacks at the moment of the data fed into the AI, and hopefully in future we have culturally equally representative AI applications, but at the moment there is no, and I think that the frameworks and the policies should at least at this point recognize that this is something lacking.
I think that is an incredibly important thing to point out, and I appreciate you doing it, especially I think in the context of medical education, where you really need to know that you can go into getting advice and support from the medical industry on a equal playing field, and it's so dangerous to have doctors with biases, and even more dangerous to have AI-driven technology that are teaching doctors biases. So I think incredibly important that you pointed out, and something for us to consider as we keep pushing for better and more responsible AI policy. So thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, can I just add one quickly? The thing I think I'm very positive that the things are moving in a good direction, and we are getting aware of this. So I would just give you an example that when ChatGPT came on horizon, people were very skeptical about it. I mean, in my institution, everybody was using it, but nobody was talking about it. Everybody was scared to talk about that I'm using ChatGPT. But now at least we are talking about it. It goes going into we are having the guidance and the frameworks how to use the AI now. So at least things are moving in a good direction. So I'm very hopeful, right?
Yes, I think you're right to point out that there has been a wonderful push from advocates from around the world to really say, hey, we have a problem here. We need this technology to be applicable to everyone, and in order to do so, we really have to make sure that we address these issues. I think Elle probably will agree that we have a long way to go. I know from some of the things she said earlier, but we are on the way, which in itself is very promising. Jess, I want to jump to you and back to you, Joseph, as well. Jess, my question for you again has to do a little bit with the user experience. So we hear, of course, that we want organizations, educational organizations, to really apply an AI-first attitude. Can AI solve this problem better? If so, let AI do it. How do we integrate these technologies seamlessly into workflows? And I mean here both for young people who have one set of digital literacy skills, and for the more experienced workers or the older generations who have a different set of digital skills. Have you given some thoughts to the biggest sort of UX challenges we have there when we deploy AI into our organizations?
Yeah. So a lot to talk about there. I want to start with identifying who the users are because there's different levels of users. We ourselves are users, all of us on this call and everyone who's been using any form of technology. And when we're talking about making, like integrating AI in our workflows, we need to consider, are we being are we educating our clients how to use these technologies the way that we're building it? But also, do our internal people understand how to use these technologies? Because we can build chatbots all day, but if we don't understand what that level of information is that a user will have, like how do I prompt it to do something? A user might even not even know what a prompt is. Like we hear that prompt engineering term all the time. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I first heard that term, I was like, wow, that's intimidating. Can I do that? And then I realized it's not that intimidating. It's just a matter of articulating your thoughts in a very clear and specific manner. Now, going back to the personas of users and user experience, there's going to be, like I said, a lot of different levels. When we're talking about the internal use, we're talking about, okay, we're going to talk about how to build a product. What are all the requirements for that? But then also, personally, how can we use it to be more efficient in our own workflow? For example, I use the Copilot transcript all the time to identify milestones in the recording so that I can get a high level before I do a deep dive. And it just gives me more context to begin with. So it's a personal thing I wanted to share. But yeah, we do definitely need to understand the users first, identify what problems that we're going to be solving for them. Are we really solving it for them or for us? Because if we build a chatbot, we're getting reduced phone calls, we're getting reduced emails to the organization. But are we frustrating the users because we're not giving them another way to communicate with us? We're not giving them the proper tools so that they can understand themselves. How do you make the most out of the chatbot we just created for you? And such.
Yeah, amazing. I think so many good points there as well. And I think, but what really resonates for sure is this idea to think deeply and carefully about the actual user experience, so that it's products and technologies, chatbots that are developed in connection to the end user, whoever they may be. A very complex matter, but that's why we have you in the field. Joseph, a similar question for you. This also has to do with the end user experience. And I'm wondering a little bit about, with your background and also the work with Encode Justice Ghana, how you help promote organizations, not just educational organizations, but all organizations, to really incorporate AI into their operations. And is there a balance between advocacy and practical implementations of supporting AI adoption? And if so, how do you think about that? Where should our efforts be put in? I'll let you take that.
Okay, so looking up around AI implementation, normally it's really hard here because even the general tech implementation is a problem, and then now AI implementation. So our advocacy director was trying to solve this was she was tackling it with the government. Um, you know, in Ghana we believe in the news. We watch the news a lot, and then we watch what the government does, what the government is advising us, how the government is like telling us to take. So if the government is championing or pushing the vibe that AI, we should use AI here, that if we use AI here, it can make this work much easier and faster, then the people in turn would adapt it. That's one thing I realized. So if the heads are willing to accept, it will be much easier to make the people, how you call it, integrate it in their life. But normally in personal life, in our personal lifestyles, I believe students are using AI a lot. Given the fact that we don't really have institutions coming out to voice out their AI policies. It also gives students their way to work their way around, because the tertiary institutions are not giving any guidelines on, oh, when you use AI for your research project or something, we are going to catch you with anything or something. So with that kind of loophole, the students also say, wow, we know AI, you don't know AI. But I know our leaders know AI. They know it. They use it. It's just that I don't know whether they don't want something about it, or for now it's just like we still see it as this novel way of stuff, and then young people are using it personally. People use it. I use AI a lot, and I feel it's about the legal framework. If we are able to push through the legal framework in terms of push through policy to strong advocacy, then I believe we are going to it. But for now, AI adoption, we are still on the terrain of adopting AI, and still on the old ways. We still try the old ways, and the old ways is what the companies are using. They are using the old ways and e-banking methods. They are really hesitant in terms of adopting AI. We are looking to see maybe new fintech breakthroughs, new innovations that will come up. But up till then, it would rely solely on the government to publish frameworks that we would adapt as citizens and a country as a whole. Yeah, that's what is happening here.
Jess, if I could just bounce back to you based on what Joseph is saying, do you see a big difference in AI use between the younger and the older generation? And if you do, what are some of your thoughts of the benefits and disadvantages of the way that the different generations are using these technologies?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of the generations and how they use it, like, are we talking about when they use it for work? Are we talking about recreational use? Because I would imagine generations that are in the professional field or in the workforce, if they're in a technical role, they're going to have more experience with understanding how to create the most efficient prompt for their role. A younger person might have more creative type of prompts that they want to use it for. Maybe they want to make some content for TikTok or something for their YouTube channel, and they want to understand, how can I make this cool animation or something. So there's various different levels of it. Again, it's ultimately what's the end goal? What do you want the outcome to be when you're using these tools? And I think that when we live in this really great time that the generations were all able to cross communicate and learn from each other, of like, oh, hey, I didn't think to use AI to make recipes out of the 4 things I have in my fridge or something, versus somebody that might say, hey, I actually know a little bit about coding. Let's see if we can use AI to write a script and automate something. So those are some discrepancies I see with the way that they communicate with these tools. But it's definitely interesting to see that cross between the generations to get together and discuss about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for elaborating that. And I like how you always go back to, well, it depends on who's using it, right? And I think that is such a key takeaway from what you were saying, that we really need to have that end user in mind when we are thinking technology and thinking solutions and questions around technology. Majid, I want to hop back to you because we are getting closer to running out of time, unfortunately, but I want you to take the time to think our group here and our listeners a little bit into the future. You are on the ground working with this technology, seeing the impact it has in education. How do you envision the role of AI in education, and maybe particularly in healthcare education, evolving over the next decade?
I'll start something by saying that a lot of times I get a question asked, or I hear this question that will AI replace the educators? So my answer to that is AI, the teachers with AI will replace the teachers without AI, because AI is getting so much into our lives, and of course, education is no exception. Um, so I think, and again, as I said, that I have been a very tech enthusiastic since the start of my career, and whenever I used to use any technology, I used to think about that whether I'm using it just for the sake of technology, that it looks cool, or is it really adding any value to it, to what I'm doing. If it's not, then I should not use it, because I'm better without of that. So I think that's one thing we need. The first thing we need to think about, that when if we want to integrate AI into the education, is it really adding any value to it, or is it just it looks cool and that's why we're using it? So that's one thing we need to think about first. That is it really adding anything? The other thing I would suggest and strongly emphasize is that having conversations going on, because between the students and the educators. And the stakeholders as well, because the students may have different perceptions, different approaches to something, and the educators look at it from the different point of view. So I think that the keep the conversations going, how they're using something, that's very, very important. And I gave an analogy in my talk earlier, that when your kids are growing up, you and when they start going out, you tell them, okay, what is good and what is not good. So in the same way, as educators, it's our responsibility to tell the students, okay, yes, AI is there, you are free to use it, but we need to tell you the pros and cons. So I think that's the second thing. The other the third point, the last point I would emphasize on is to measure as well, like if AI is integrated into education, then we need to be accountable for that as well. So what value it has added, we need to evaluate that practice as well, and if and whether it is compromising any ethical issues. If it is, then we need to think about that as well. I said last one, but the fourth one, I think, again, I would emphasize, and I've been saying it since morning as well, that having policies and frameworks in place is very important to help us guide and make the full benefit of the AI integration. And again, as we say that an expression in medicine, that we use something because benefit outweighs the risk. So there may be risks for using AI, but what we see for now is there more benefits. So we need to be careful and to make the maximum benefit from it without being hurt by it.
Yeah, I think very wise words, and I think actually healthcare education is such a particularly good use case for us to follow, because I can't think of anything that has a more impactful direct impact on human beings around the world than the way our healthcare staff and support persons are educated, and AI certainly has a lot to do with this. And you ended up mentioning about frameworks, establishing framework, good policies, which then bounces me back to Elle, because Elle, a question for you I then have is, what is a key takeaway that, or I suppose I could say a call to action that you have for policymakers and perhaps also for educators to foster a responsible and impactful use of AI in education from the youth voice? What are your thoughts there?
Thank you. So I mentioned this in my talk, but it's this approach of a not about us, without us. So really giving youth voice, a seat at the table, hearing our concerns, our thoughts, and not just assuming or telling us, well, young people must care about this. Actually hear what we have to say and consider it, but not just that. So that's step one, I think, listening to what young people have to say and hearing our voices. But step two is we need to see some meaningful action, and not just like empty promises, like real policy commitments. real commitments that they will act on with tangible benefits, and also some long-term strategy. So I think a lot of policies and politicians fall short in the sense that every few years they worry about being re-elected. So the policies due to that are often very short-term, but really kind of going into the future, the act of the futures, and do some long-term strategy. So especially for issues of AI and climate change, these are issues that will not be resolved in 3 or 4 years. What's our long-term strategy for 25 or 50 years? And I think now we're in the most pivotal point of responsible AI. And this is the point where we kind of make it or break it. And I really hope that society does not end up looking back in 20 years' time thinking we had all of the information, why did we not do anything?
So let's see here if I can get the sound to work. Yeah, so I think that very, very important, and I think it definitely resonates that don't talk about us without us. I think that that really rings true. And then that we had the information and why didn't we act upon it? I think those are certainly important takeaways, and maybe even something we need to make a little banner that we always have posted for our policymakers and for educators. Stop solving our problems for us. We need to be part of the problem solving process, and we need to be part of the conversation. So it's definitely something that I try to integrate into my own work and make sure that we have the young voices as part of the conversation. And with that in mind, we just have a few minutes left. However, I have been asking questions, which has directed our conversation, but I wonder if any of our panelists have some words that they wish to share that we haven't covered in our conversation so far, and if you want to jump in with some thoughts for our audience around the world that are listening in today.
I have a thought, if it's okay. I'll try to keep it short. Even though we have all these AI tools accessible to us and there's so many free courses there, I think the backbone of any policy, of any educational path with AI is to instill critical thinking skills, because that is still something that we have to monitor. AI is not going to monitor itself. I mean, eventually it might get to that point, but whose job is it to assess it? It's our job. And we need to keep not just ourselves as aware as professionals, but spread the word to our families, where all these scams happening, our children. We don't know if they're interacting with a malicious AI bot that somebody created that's simulating a child. We need to instill these critical thinking skills so that people have that knowledge to determine what's real, what's not, what's safe, what isn't.
I think I would add just one some last words from me is that I think we need to remember that we are dealing with machines all around, the AI all around, but we're still humans. Okay, so we still have brains. We need to sit and reflect that what is it doing to our lives. So I would give you an example that recently I've been using one AI tool with my students, and the students are loving it because it's making things easier for them. But then I reflect that what is it actually doing? Is it helping them to learn, or is it destroying their learning process? So I think we also need to reflect that what impact is it having on human life? That's what I want to say and share.
Yeah, I think very good point there as well. What's the actual impact on human lives and the way we live as human beings? Any final closing thoughts from you, Elle, or from you, Joseph?
I can keep this short and sweet, but my warning for everybody in the audience and everybody listening is please be careful of your privacy and your data when it comes to AI. And I think one particular trend on social media was type into ChatGPT, draw a picture of me based on everything you know about me. And the really alarming thing that I saw from all ages was how much it resembled the poster. And you've got to think, how did the AI come to know what you look like, your interests, And so it really extends that use outside of work use. But we can't rely on technology companies who may not rely on jurisdiction and policy to protect our privacy and data. So please be careful.
Thank you for that warning, Al. I think it cannot be said enough. Be careful with your data. Be careful what you put out there. It may seem like it's quite harmless to send it out there, but at the end of the day, once it's online, it's forever, and it may resurface at another time, and of course can also be used for bad. Joseph, any final thought from you that you want to share with our audience around the world?
Yeah, hello. So, last words I would like to share is like to all youths out there, especially young people, especially in places where there are no legal frameworks to govern the way you use your AI. One thing I've learned from tech is that there are data leaks and data banks. They store the data, but they really care about gathering the data and then storing them and using it to retrain your AI, reprogram, recreate better models to serve you. So it's all on what's going on in there, what you are feeding into your AI, and then the kind of information you are trying to collect from the AI too is really important. So you should really watch what's going in and what's coming out from the AI. So it's more on getting your prompts right, being straightforward, adhering to the guidelines, frameworks that have been set internationally for all of us to follow. And I believe when we be our own keepers and we police ourselves, I feel the AI safety vibe is going to be well championed here.
I think very important words, also another word of warning, and then I think it cannot be said enough that we have to be really careful with what we put online. And as Al says, we cannot rely on the tech companies to do this. We really have to voice our concerns, what we see and the risks that we're encountering online, and that's ever more the case for young people and certainly for children who have no understanding at all of what they are experiencing online. I could go on forever with these conversations, and I'm incredibly grateful to all of you for taking the time to join us at the Responsible AI Summit. We will be saving recordings of these conversations so that our audience members can go back and listen to these conversations. And we also want to continue these conversations on a global scale. So I'm hoping that this is not the last time that we will meet online in this space. But until we do, I want to thank all of you so much for taking the time today. Thank you to our audience for listening into this panel. We're going to take a little break, and then we will return with our second part of our schedule today. Thank you so much, and all the best to all of you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.